The language of home. Chapter 1. The difficult one. I never meant to adopt a dog at 73. Let me be clear about this. I had a plan. A sensible, well-thought-out plan for my golden years. That involved crossword puzzles, library books, and absolutely no responsibility for another living creature. My knees complain about stairs. My hands shake when I pour tea. Most days, I can barely keep up with myself. But plans, as my late husband Harold used to say, are just suggestions we make to a universe that isn't listening. It was a Tuesday when I made the mistake of accompanying my daughter Jennifer to the animal shelter. She wasn't even looking for herself. She was volunteering for their senior pet adoption drive, taking photos for social media posts. "Just come keep me company, Mom," she'd said. "You don't have to adopt anything." Famous last words. The shelter was loud and overwhelming, full of barking and the smell of disinfectant trying its best to mask other, less pleasant smells. Jennifer buzzed around with her camera, cooing at every dog we passed. I trailed behind, trying not to make eye contact with any of them. I'm not heartless. Quite the opposite. I knew if I looked too long, I'd want to take them all home. We were almost done, thank goodness, when I noticed him. He was in the last kennel, curled in the back corner while a young beagle in the next cage bounced like a tennis ball, desperate for attention. This dog didn't bounce. He didn't even seem to notice we were there. He just lay with his gray muzzle pressed against the concrete wall, his cloudy eyes fixed on nothing. "That's Barnaby," the volunteer said, noticing where I'd stopped. Her name tag read, Ashley, and she had the kind of gentle, apologetic tone usually reserved for delivering bad news. "He's been here 6 months. 12 years old, some kind of terrier mix. He's a bit temperamental." "Temperamental how?" Ashley shifted her weight. "He doesn't really eat. Doesn't interact much. 3 families have tried to adopt him, and all 3 brought him back within 2 weeks. Said he was too difficult." She brightened artificially. "But we have some wonderful younger dogs if you're interested. That beagle next door is only 3, and I'll take him," I heard myself say. Jennifer's head whipped around so fast I worried about whiplash. "Mom, what?" "I'll take him," I repeated, more firmly this time, though I had no idea why I was saying it. "Barnaby. I'll take him home." Ashley blinked at me. Are you sure? I should mention, he hasn't eaten properly in days. And he doesn't really respond to people. The vet says he's physically healthy, but emotionally, I'm sure. Something about that stubborn old dog, lying there with his face to the wall, refusing to participate in the world. It reminded me of myself after Harold died. Going through the motions. Not quite present. Waiting for something I couldn't name. "Mom," Jennifer said carefully, pulling me aside while Ashley went to get paperwork. "You need a companion, not a project. This dog seems like he needs serious help." "So did I, once," I said. "You brought me casseroles for 3 months. And dragged me to book club until I stopped wanting to hide under the covers all day." "That's different. You're a person. He's a living thing that's given up. I know what that feels like." I touched her arm. "I'll be fine. We'll figure it out together." Jennifer sighed in that particular way children sigh at their parents when they think you're making a terrible decision, but love you too much to stop you. "Okay. But I'm checking in every day." 20 minutes later, I was driving home with a silent, gray dog in my backseat. And a packet of care instructions I was already dreading. Chapter 2. The Wall. The first week was an absolute disaster. The shelter gave me a starter kit, a leash, a small bag of food, some basic information sheets, and sent us on our way with promises that he'd settle in eventually. Jennifer helped me stop at a pet store on the way home. We grabbed a dog bed, bowls, toys, treats, and about 5 different types of food based on what the shelter volunteer had scribbled down for us. I felt completely overwhelmed standing in the aisles, staring at thousands of options. "Just get the basics, Mom," Jennifer said, loading things into the cart. "You can figure out what he likes later." When we got home, I quickly set up a cozy corner in my living room with his bed positioned to catch the afternoon sun. I even had Jennifer run to the bookstore for a copy of Understanding Senior Dogs, while I arranged everything, hoping it would give me some guidance. Barnaby ignored all of it. He walked into my house, surveyed his options with those cloudy eyes, and promptly lay down with his face to the wall next to my bookshelf. And there he stayed. "Come on, boy," I coaxed on day 2, setting a bowl of premium wet food near his nose. "You've got to eat something." Barnaby's tail didn't even twitch. I tried everything. Kibble, wet food, chicken, beef, fish. Those expensive grain-free options that cost more than my own groceries. I tried mixing foods. I tried hand feeding. At one particularly desperate point on day 3, I found myself sitting on the floor singing, "You Are My Sunshine," to a dog who had chosen to ignore my existence. Jennifer called every evening. "How's it going?" "He hasn't eaten since he got here," I admitted on day 4. "The shelter said he was eating a little bit there, but now, nothing. Just lies there facing the wall." "Maybe take him to the vet?" "The shelter vet cleared him before I adopted him. Said he's healthy, just depressed, I guess." "Dogs get depressed?" "Apparently." I looked at Barnaby's unmoving form. "I'm starting to wonder if I made a mistake. Do you want me to come over?" "No," I said, surprising myself. "No, I think we just need time." But I wasn't sure time was going to be enough. I established a routine, figuring that even if Barnaby didn't care, at least I'd feel like I was doing something. Twice a day, I'd clip on his leash and coax him outside for a walk. Walk was generous. It was more like a slow shuffle around my small front garden. He'd do his business with all the enthusiasm of someone filling out tax forms, then head straight back to his spot by the wall. My neighbor Patricia, who lived on the other side, caught me during one of these joyless excursions. "That's the new dog?" she asked, leaning over our shared fence with her coffee mug. Patricia was 60-something, perpetually cheerful, and intensely curious about everyone's business, in that way that could be either endearing or exhausting depending on the day. "This is Barnaby. He doesn't look very happy." "No," I agreed. "He doesn't. Maybe he needs a friend. I could bring Mr. Whiskers over. He's excellent with dogs." I looked at Barnaby, who was staring at a dandelion with the intensity of someone contemplating the meaning of existence. "I don't think he's ready for cat friendship just yet." "Well, if you need anything," Patricia said brightly, "you just holler." By day 5, I was genuinely worried. Barnaby had taken a few reluctant laps of water, but I hadn't seen him eat anything. Not one bite. I called the vet's office, and they suggested bringing him in, but when I tried to picture wrestling this stubborn dog into my car, my back ached in sympathy. "One more day," I told him that night. "Eat something tomorrow, or we're going to the vet. Deal?" Barnaby continued his intensive study of my living room wall. I went to bed that night feeling like a failure. I'd thought I could help him, thought we'd help each other, maybe. But maybe Jennifer was right. Maybe I'd taken on more than I could handle. Maybe Barnaby needed someone younger. Someone with more energy, someone who knew what they were doing. The next morning, I decided to try something different. Instead of the usual shuffle around the front garden, I'd take him to the back. Change of scenery. Different smells. Worth a shot. That's when everything changed. Chapter 3. The name. I was coaxing Barnaby around the side of my house when I heard Tom's voice. Tom lived on my left side, opposite Patricia. And we had what you'd call a cordial neighbor relationship. We'd exchange pleasantries over the fence, comment on the weather, complain about property taxes. I knew he was a widower, probably around my age, spent most of his time tinkering in his garage. We'd lived next to each other for 5 years and had probably had a dozen conversations, total. "Morning, Margaret," he called out, appearing at my gate with a bag of mulch over his shoulder. He was a tall man, still strong-looking despite his years, with silver hair and the kind of face that suggested he'd been handsome when he was younger. "Getting some exercise?" "Trying to," I said, tugging gently on Barnaby's leash. Though I'm not sure who's walking whom at this point. Tom set down his mulch and looked at Barnaby more closely. His expression shifted. Confusion, then something like shock. "Well, hello there, old fellow." Then, almost absently, as if the name had slipped out without permission, he said, "Cooper? Is that you, Cooper?" I've never seen anything like what happened next. Barnaby's head snapped up. Those cloudy eyes suddenly looked clear, focused, alive. His ears, which I'd begun to think were purely decorative, pricked forward in attention. And then, moving faster than I'd seen him move since the moment I met him, he walked straight to Tom and sat down. Not sort of sat down. Not eventually sat down. He walked over with purpose and sat down with perfect obedience, like a soldier responding to a command he'd learned a lifetime ago. I nearly dropped the leash. "Good grief," I breathed. "Tom, what did you just do?" But Tom wasn't listening to me. He'd gone pale, staring at Barnaby. At Cooper? Like he was seeing a ghost. His hands were shaking as he reached down. And when his fingers touched the dog's head, Barnaby leaned into the touch with such obvious relief that my throat went tight. "Tom?" I prompted gently. He looked up at me, and his eyes were wet. "I had a dog named Cooper," he said quietly. "Golden retriever mix, about this size. Lost him. God, it's been 10, 11 years now? During a hiking trip upstate. He slipped his leash chasing a squirrel and just vanished. We searched for weeks." His voice cracked. "Put up flyers, checked every shelter within 100 miles, drove around calling his name until we were hoarse." I looked down at the dog pressed against Tom's legs, tail wagging. Actually wagging. For the first time since I'd known him. "You think this is him?" He'd be about the right age now. 12, maybe 13. Tom gently lifted Barnaby's left ear, and I saw his breath catch. Cooper tore his ear on a fence as a puppy. There was a little notch missing from the tip. Right here. I leaned closer. There it was. A small, distinctive notch in the ear. "My wife." Tom's voice broke completely. He cleared his throat, tried again. "Sarah never got over losing him. We'd had Cooper since he was 8 weeks old. He was like our child, you know? After the kids grew up and moved away, Cooper was. He was everything. Sarah passed 2 years ago, and one of the last things she said was that she hoped Cooper had found a good home, wherever he was." We stood there in my front garden, 2 old fools crying over a dog while the morning traffic hummed past on the main road. And Patricia probably watched from her window with her binoculars. What do you want to do? I asked finally. Tom looked at me, then back at Cooper. What do you mean? He's your dog. Was your dog. Is your dog? I floundered. I've only had him a week, and honestly, it's been a terrible week. If you want him back. No. Tom said quickly. Then, more softly. No, I don't think that's right. You adopted him. You've been trying to help him. I think. He scratched behind Cooper's ears, and the dog's eyes closed in bliss. I think maybe he's supposed to be with you. But maybe. Maybe I could visit? Visit? If that's all right. I'd like to spend some time with him. With Cooper. I never got to say goodbye. I looked at this man I barely knew, at this dog I'd barely begun to know, and felt something shift in my chest. How about you come in for coffee? Chapter 4. The Breakthrough. Tom came in, and I made coffee while Cooper. Barnaby. The dog followed Tom's every movement with alert, watchful eyes. We sat in my living room, the one Cooper had been ignoring for nearly a week, and suddenly it was like someone had flipped a switch. The dog sat between us, leaning against Tom's leg but occasionally glancing at me, as if checking to make sure I was still there. He really won't eat? Tom asked. Not a bite since I brought him home. I've tried everything. Tom thought for a moment. Do you have any of that food here? Whatever you've been trying? I brought out the currant bowl I'd prepared that morning. High-quality kibble mixed with some wet food. Cooper hadn't even sniffed it. Tom set it on the floor between us. Cooper, he said, in a voice that was firm but gentle. Eat. And the dog ate. Not enthusiastically. This was still a senior dog with opinions. But he ate. Steady, methodical bites, like he was completing a task he'd been assigned. I watched in astonishment. How did you? It was one of Sarah's commands. She trained him. Tom's voice went soft. She was so good with him. Better than me. I'd let him get away with anything, but Sarah had rules. Cooper, eat. Cooper, come. Cooper, stay. He knew exactly what she expected. We watched the dog eat, and I felt relief flood through me. He was going to be okay. We were going to be okay. Can you teach me? I asked. Tom looked surprised. Teach you? The commands. The way to talk to him. I want to learn how to care for him properly. How to speak his language. Something in Tom's expression shifted. Gratitude, maybe, or relief. I'd like that. So we made an arrangement, right there over cooling coffee and a dog who was finally eating. Tom would come over twice a day. Morning and evening. To help with Cooper. We'd walk him together, feed him together, and Tom would teach me everything he remembered about the dog's training. I have a condition, though, I said. What's that? You have to tell me about him. About Cooper as a puppy, about Sarah, about the life he had before. I want to know who he was. Tom smiled, really smiled, for the first time since he'd recognized the dog. I can do that. After Tom left that day, promising to return in the evening, Cooper did something remarkable. Instead of returning to his spot facing the wall, he walked over to the patch of sunlight streaming through my front window and lay down in it. Just lay there, soaking in the warmth, looking almost peaceful. I called Jennifer. Mom? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, I said, watching Cooper. Everything's right. You're not going to believe what just happened. Chapter 5. The Stories. Over the next few weeks, a routine developed. Tom would arrive each morning around 8, and we'd have coffee while Cooper ate his breakfast. Then we'd take him for a walk. A real walk now, not just a shuffle around the garden. Cooper moved with more purpose these days, still slow but interested in the world again. Sniffing bushes and marking territory like a dog who remembered how to be a dog. In the evenings, Tom would return around 6. We'd feed Cooper dinner, then sit in my back garden while the dog dozed in the grass and Tom told me stories. He was the worst puppy, Tom said one evening, laughing at the memory. Chewed everything. Sarah's favorite shoes, the leg of our dining room table, an entire roll of paper towels. One time, we came home and found he'd somehow opened the refrigerator and eaten an entire pot roast we'd been planning for dinner. How did she not kill him? Oh, she wanted to. But then he'd do something adorable, and she'd melt. Tom scratched Cooper's head. He had this way of tilting his head when you talked to him, like he was really trying to understand every word. Still does it sometimes. Tell me about the day you lost him. Tom's smile faded. We'd gone hiking upstate. There was this trail we loved, went there every fall to see the leaves. Cooper was usually so good off leash. He'd run ahead but always come back when we called. That day, a squirrel darted across the path, and something just clicked in him. Prey drive, I guess. He took off into the woods, and no matter how much we called, he didn't come back. How long did you search? 3 weeks on site. Months after that, driving up every weekend, checking shelters, following any lead. Sarah wouldn't give up. She'd call animal controls in surrounding counties, post on every lost pet website. She kept his food bowl, his favorite toy, everything, just in case. I watched Cooper sleeping in the grass, his sides rising and falling peacefully. What do you think happened to him? I imagine someone found him. Probably kept him for a while, maybe sold him or gave him away. Then somewhere along the line, he ended up in a shelter. Could have been bounced around. Tom's jaw tightened. The shelter records you showed me said he'd been returned 3 times. 3 families tried and gave up on him. Because he was waiting for you, I said softly. For Sarah, mostly. She was the one he really bonded with. I was the fun parent, but she was his person. Tom looked at me. That's why this is so strange, Margaret. He's accepting you. Letting you into his life. That's not like Cooper. Not like the Cooper I knew, anyway. Maybe he's learned that sometimes you have to make do with what you have, I said. Maybe he knows Sarah isn't coming back, and you can't be there all the time, so he's decided I'm acceptable. Tom laughed. You're more than acceptable. You saved him. If you hadn't adopted him, if I hadn't, someone else would have eventually. Would they? Tom's expression turned serious. He'd been there 6 months. 3 families had already given up. How long before they decided he was unadoptable? Before they. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I reached down and rested my hand on Cooper's warm fur. Well, it doesn't matter now. He's got both of us. Chapter 6. The Investigation. I couldn't let it go. The mystery of where Cooper had been for all those years. It felt important somehow, like understanding his past would help me take better care of his present. Jennifer, who worked in marketing and was frighteningly good at internet research, helped me dig. So, we know Tom and Sarah lost him 11 years ago upstate, she said, sitting at my kitchen table with her laptop while Cooper snoozed nearby. And the shelter said he'd been in their system for 6 months, returned by 3 families. Let's start there. We called the shelter. Ashley, the volunteer who'd been there when I adopted Cooper, was happy to help. She pulled his records and emailed them over. Okay, Jennifer said, reading through the file. He was brought in as a stray 5 years ago. Picked up by animal control in a town about 40 miles from here. No collar, no chip. They held him for the standard stray period, then he went up for adoption. 5 years ago? I mused. So where was he for the first 6 years after he was lost? That's the question, isn't it? We spent the next week making calls. Animal controls in the counties around where Tom and Sarah had been hiking. Shelters. Rescue organizations. Jennifer even posted in local Facebook groups, sharing Cooper's photo and story. Finally, we got a lead. A woman named Rita called me back. She ran a small rescue operation 2 counties over from where Cooper had been found. I remember that dog, she said. Not his name, but I remember him. He was with a family. The Hendersons, I think? They'd found him wandering near their property years ago, kept him even though they couldn't find his owners. Then when Mr. Henderson passed away and Mrs. Henderson went into assisted living, the family couldn't keep him. That's when he came through my rescue. How long did the Hendersons have him? Oh, must have been 6 or 7 years. Nice people. The dog was well cared for, but I remember he was always a bit standoffish. Wouldn't really bond with anyone except Mr. Henderson. My heart squeezed. And then Mr. Henderson died. Right. The dog grieved hard, I think. Stopped eating for a while, very withdrawn. Mrs. Henderson was heartbroken. She was dealing with her own grief and couldn't handle the dog too. We took him in, found him a placement with a family in the next town over. That family, I eventually learned, had kept Cooper for 3 months before deciding he was too difficult. He went to another family after that, lasted 2 months. Then a third family, who returned him after just 3 weeks. Finally, he'd ended up at the shelter where I found him. I put together a timeline. 6 years with the Hendersons after he was lost. Then bounced around rescue and families for another 5 years. 11 years total. His entire adult life, essentially, spent in various forms of waiting and losing and starting over. No wonder he'd been facing the wall. You know what I think? Jennifer said when I told her what I'd discovered. I think Cooper loved as hard as he could, twice. First Tom and Sarah, then Mr. Henderson. And both times, he lost everything. By the time you got him, he decided not to try anymore. Until he heard Tom's voice. Until he heard Tom's voice. She agreed. Mom, what you're doing? Giving him a stable home, letting Tom visit. It's exactly what he needs. A soft place to land. I looked at Cooper, who was currently sprawling inelegantly across my couch despite my initial rule about furniture. Tom had laughed when I told him about the rule and said Sarah had tried the same thing, lasted about a week. I don't know if I'm enough, I admitted. You're not supposed to be everything. That's why you've got Tom. Jennifer closed her laptop. You know, I was worried when you adopted him. I thought you were taking on too much. But I think maybe you both needed each other. We did, I said. We do. Chapter 7. The Adjustment. As the weeks turned into months, something beautiful happened. We became a family. Not a traditional family, maybe. More like a patchwork quilt of seniors stitched together by circumstance and a stubborn dog. But a family nonetheless. Tom and I fell into an easy companionship. We'd have coffee together most mornings, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his late wife Sarah, and I told him about Harold. We compared notes on being widowed, on the loneliness that comes with it, on how strange it felt to reach for someone in the night and find empty space. I still set 2 coffee mugs out sometimes, Tom admitted one morning. Forget for just a second that it's only me. I still cook too much food, I said. Harold had an enormous appetite. I'd make these huge pots of stew, and now I'm eating leftovers for a week. You should invite me for dinner sometime, Tom said, then looked embarrassed. If that's not too forward. It's not, I said, smiling. How about Thursday? Thursday dinners became a thing. Tom would arrive at 6 with a bottle of wine or a loaf of bread, and we'd eat together while Cooper begged shamelessly under the table. Tom taught me more commands. Cooper, down. Cooper, stay. Cooper, come. My voice wasn't the one Cooper had been waiting for, but he was learning to trust it anyway. One evening, about 3 months after Tom had first recognized him, Cooper did something extraordinary. After dinner, he walked over to where I was sitting on the couch, circled twice, and climbed up to lie down with his head in my lap. Tom, washing dishes in the kitchen, heard my small gasp. You okay? He's cuddling me, I said, wonder in my voice. Tom, he's actually cuddling. Tom came to the doorway, dish towel in hand, and his smile was radiant. Well, look at that. You're his person now, too. I stroked Cooper's gray fur, feeling the warmth of him, the weight of his trust. We're all each other's people, I think. Yeah, Tom said softly. I think we are. Patricia, of course, noticed the change. I see Tom's truck here quite a bit, she mentioned one afternoon, cornering me while I was getting my mail. He's been helping with Cooper. Her eyes twinkled. That's nice. Real nice. 2 people, spending time together, having dinners. Patricia. I'm just saying. You're both single, you're both lovely people, you clearly enjoy each other's company. We're friends, I said firmly. Friends helping each other. If you say so, she sing-songed, heading back to her house. But later that night, after Tom had gone home and I was getting ready for bed, I thought about Patricia's words. Were we just friends? We'd gotten close over these months. I looked forward to seeing him, felt disappointed on the rare days he couldn't make it over. He made me laugh. He listened when I talked. He'd become a constant in my life in a way I hadn't expected. Was it more than friendship? Did I want it to be? I pushed the thoughts away. I was 73 years old, for heaven's sake. Too old for romantic complications. Weren't we? Cooper, sleeping on his bed in the corner of my room. Another rule that had gone out the window. Snored softly. What do you think, boy? I whispered. Am I being silly? Cooper's tail thumped once against his bed. I decided to take that as a yes. Chapter 8. The Gift. Winter came, bringing cold winds and early darkness. Tom started arriving earlier in the evenings, and our Thursday dinners extended to Tuesdays as well. He helped me winterize my garden, fix a leaky faucet, replace the weather stripping on my front door. You don't have to do all this, I protested when he showed up one Saturday with tools and caulk. I know I don't have to. I want to. He looked at me steadily. You've given me back part of my life, Margaret. Let me help. I didn't give you anything. That was Cooper. It was you. He interrupted. You adopted a difficult, broken dog when anyone else would have passed him by. You called me over that day. You could have kept him to yourself, but you shared him. You've let me be part of his life again, and that means. His voice caught. That means everything. I didn't know what to say to that, so I handed him a screwdriver and got out of his way. As Christmas approached, Jennifer invited me to spend the holiday with her family. You and Cooper both, she insisted. The kids would love to meet him. What about Tom? Jennifer paused. What about Tom? I can't just leave him alone for Christmas. So invite him too. To your house? That's your family time, Mom. Jennifer said gently. Tom is family now, isn't he? Not by blood, but by choice. Invite him. Please. So I did, nervously, certain he'd say no. Instead, Tom's face lit up. I'd love to. I haven't spent Christmas with people in God since Sarah passed. Are you sure your daughter won't mind? She's the one who insisted. Christmas was chaotic and wonderful. Jennifer's kids, my grandchildren, were fascinated by Cooper and his story. They were gentle with him, understanding that he was old and needed careful handling. Tom told them stories about Cooper as a puppy, and I watched him come alive in a way I hadn't seen before, surrounded by warmth and family and noise. After dinner, when the kids were playing with their new toys and the adults were sprawled around the living room in a food coma, Tom caught my hand. Thank you, he said quietly. For including me. Thank you for being here. We sat together on Jennifer's couch, Cooper snoring at our feet, and I realized I was happier than I'd been in years. Not the happiness of my marriage to Harold. That was its own thing, precious and past. This was different. Quieter, maybe. But no less real. On the drive home, Tom said, I got you something. For Christmas. Tom, we agreed no gifts. I know. But I made this before we agreed. He looked sheepish. It's in my garage. Can I show you tomorrow? The next day, he led me to his garage and pulled a tarp off something in the corner. It was a wooden frame, beautifully crafted, with 3 photographs inside. One was old and slightly faded. A young couple. Tom and Sarah, clearly. With a golden puppy. One was recent. Tom and me sitting in my back garden with Cooper between us. The third was just Cooper, sleeping in a patch of sunlight. 3 chapters, Tom said. The beginning, the middle we missed, and the now. I touched the frame with shaking fingers. Tom, this is beautiful. I wanted you to understand how much this means. How much you mean. He cleared his throat. Not just for giving me time with Cooper. For giving me a reason to get up in the morning again. For making me feel like part of something. I turned to him, this man who'd become such an important part of my life, and made a decision. Tom, would you like to have dinner? Not Thursday dinner. A dinner. A date. He blinked at me. Margaret, are you asking me out? I suppose I am. You can say no, yes. He interrupted. Yes, absolutely yes. Cooper, who'd followed us into the garage, barked once, as if in approval. We both laughed. Chapter 9. Full circle. Spring came, bringing warmth and new growth and possibility. Tom and I were officially together now. Dating, as ridiculous as that word seemed at our age. He'd asked if he should stop coming over twice a day, worried it might be too much now that our relationship had shifted, but I'd told him firmly that I needed his help with Cooper. The truth was, I just wanted to see him as much as possible. Cooper, for his part, seemed satisfied with the arrangement. He'd grown comfortable with both of us, splitting his affection between us almost equally. On the rare nights Tom stayed over, Cooper would sleep at the foot of the bed like he was guarding us both. Jennifer thought it was wonderful. Patricia claimed she'd seen it coming from the beginning. The grandkids started calling Tom, Grandpa Tom, which made him tear up the first time it happened. We were sitting in my back garden one evening in late May, watching Cooper sniff around the flower beds, when Tom said, I've been thinking. Always dangerous. I teased. I'm serious. He took my hand. My house is too big for one person. Has been for years. And you're always saying this house could use some work, updating the kitchen, fixing the porch. Tom. What if I sold my place and moved in here? Or we sold both and got somewhere new together? Something more manageable for both of us. My heart stuttered. That's a big step. I know. And if you're not ready, I understand. But Margaret, I'm 75 years old. Sarah's been gone 3 years. I've spent enough time being lonely. He squeezed my hand. I don't want to waste whatever time I have left. I want to spend it with you. With Cooper. With family. I looked at Cooper, who had given up on the flowers and was now lying in his favorite sunny spot, looking peaceful and content. This dog who'd been lost and found again. Who'd spent years waiting for a voice he recognized, for someone who spoke his language. We'd all been lost, in our way. All waiting for something we couldn't name. And somehow, we'd found each other. Yes. I said. Yes, let's do it. Tom's smile could have lit up the whole neighborhood. We decided to keep my house. It was smaller, easier to maintain, and Cooper already knew every corner of it. Tom would sell his place and move in by summer's end. The day of the moving, half the neighborhood came out to help, including Patricia, who'd brought enough casseroles to feed an army. Tom didn't have much furniture. We'd already combined households gradually over the spring. But there were boxes of photographs, books, tools, and right at the end, one very important item. Tom carried it himself. Cooper's original collar, the one he'd been wearing the day he was lost. Sarah had kept it all these years, and Tom had kept it after she passed. That evening, after everyone had left and the boxes were mostly unpacked, Tom sat on the floor with Cooper and gently fastened the collar around the dog's neck. It was worn and faded, but the tag was still readable. Cooper. And a phone number that had long since been disconnected. Cooper sat very still, as if he understood the significance of the moment. There. Tom said softly, his voice thick. Now you're really home. I sat down beside them, and Cooper leaned against us both, creating a bridge between Tom's past and our shared future. He's come full circle, I said. In a way. We all have, Tom replied, putting his arm around my shoulders. We've all come home. Chapter 10. The language we share. A year passed. Then another. Cooper aged, as old dogs do. His muzzle grew wider, his steps slower. Some mornings he needed help getting up from his bed, and stairs became impossible, so we set up everything he needed on the first floor. The vet said his kidneys were declining, his heart murmur was getting worse, and we should prepare ourselves. We knew the time we had left with him was precious and finite. But here's what I learned in those final years with Cooper. Love doesn't have to be perfect to be profound. It doesn't have to last forever to matter. And sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is simply to speak their language, even if it takes us a lifetime to learn it. Cooper taught me that. Tom and I made every day count. We carried Cooper to the car for short rides to the park, where he could sit in the grass and smell the world. We fed him his favorite foods. Chicken and rice that Tom cooked specially. We took 1,000 photographs, wanting to remember every moment. Jennifer and the grandkids visited often. Patricia continued to pop over unannounced, but we'd grown fond of her nosiness. She'd sit with Cooper sometimes when Tom and I needed to run errands, talking to him about everything and nothing. He's a good listener, she told me once. Doesn't judge. Just sits there with those cloudy old eyes and makes you feel heard. That's his gift. I agreed. One autumn evening, nearly 3 years after I'd first brought Cooper home, Tom and I were sitting in the back garden with him. The air was crisp, the leaves were turning, and Cooper was dozing between us, his breathing labored but peaceful. "Do you think he's happy?" I asked Tom quietly. Tom was silent for a moment, his hand resting on Cooper's side. "I think he's content. I think he knows he's loved. That's all any of us can hope for, really. I'm glad you found each other again. I'm glad I got to be part of his story." "You're not just part of his story, Margaret. You're the reason there's a happy ending." Tom looked at me with such tenderness it made my chest ache. "For both of us." Cooper shifted, let out a long sigh, and settled deeper into sleep. We sat there until the stars came out, three old souls keeping each other company, speaking the only language that really matters. The language of home, of belonging, of love that doesn't give up even when everything else does. Epilogue. What remains? Cooper passed away that winter, peacefully, in his sleep. He was curled up in his favorite spot, the patch of sunlight in my living room, with Tom and me nearby. We buried him in the back garden, under the oak tree where he'd spent so many afternoons dozing. Tom carved a marker. Cooper. Lost and found and loved. The house felt empty without him. Too quiet. I'd gotten used to the sound of his tags jingling, his soft snores, the click of his nails on the hardwood. "Should we get another dog?" Tom asked one morning, a few weeks after we'd lost Cooper. I thought about it. Maybe eventually. But not yet. I'm not ready. Me neither. We grieved together, which made it bearable. We told stories about Cooper, laughed about his quirks, cried when the missing got too heavy. Jennifer came by with the kids, and they planted flowers on Cooper's grave. Marigolds, because they were bright and cheerful, and Cooper had deserved bright and cheerful things. Spring came again, as it always does. One morning, I was having coffee in the back garden when Tom sat down beside me with his tablet. "I've been looking at the shelter website," he admitted. I raised an eyebrow. "Oh? There's a senior dog. Collie mix, maybe 10 years old. Been there 4 months. They say she's shy, doesn't warm up to people easily." He showed me the photo. A beautiful dog with sad eyes. I thought maybe we could go meet her. Just meet her. I looked at the photo, at this dog who was waiting for someone to speak her language, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not a replacement for Cooper. Nothing could replace him. But maybe a new chapter. A new story to tell. Just meet her. I agreed. Tom smiled and took my hand. We'd learned something from Cooper, Tom and I. We'd learned that love is patient. That healing takes time. That sometimes the most broken things just need someone willing to wait, to listen, to learn their language. We'd learned that it's never too late for a second chance. Or a third. Or a fourth. We'd learned that home isn't a place. It's the people who refuse to give up on you, even when you've given up on yourself. And we'd learned that the best families aren't always the ones we're born into. Sometimes they're the ones we build from scratch. A stubborn dog, a lonely neighbor, an elderly woman who didn't know what she was getting into. Sometimes they're the ones who find us exactly when we need to be found. As Tom and I sat in the garden where Cooper used to sleep, planning our visit to the shelter, I thought about that first day I'd seen him at the shelter. Gray, cloudy-eyed, facing the wall, refusing the world. I thought about how close I'd come to walking past his kennel. I thought about all the small moments that had led us here. Tom calling out a name, Cooper lifting his head, all of us choosing each other day after day after day. "Thank you," I said to Tom. "For what?" "For Cooper. For teaching me his language. For becoming part of my life." Tom squeezed my hand. "Thank you for letting me in. For sharing him with me. For everything. We sat in comfortable silence, two old people who'd found each other through a dog who'd been waiting for a voice he recognized. In the end, we all got what we needed. Cooper got his goodbye, and a few good years of peace and love at the end of a hard life. Tom got his second chance at family, at connection, at not being alone. And me? I got everything I didn't know I needed. Purpose, companionship, love. I got to be the person someone waited for, even if I wasn't the original person they'd been waiting for. I got to learn that at 73, life can still surprise you. Still transform you. Still teach you its most important lessons. I got to learn that sometimes the greatest gift we can give is simply to show up. To stay. To speak the language of patience and persistence and unconditional love, even when. Especially when. It's hard. The shelter would be open in an hour. There was a shy collie mix waiting there, not knowing that two old people who spoke the language of second chances were on their way. Not knowing that she was about to come home. I finished my coffee and stood up, Tom rising beside me. Ready? He asked. I looked at Cooper's grave, at the marigolds blooming bright and cheerful in the morning sun, and smiled. Ready. We'd learned Cooper's language together. Now it was time to learn someone else's. And this time, we'd know exactly what to say.